the best stories in video games, ones that can only be told. Yeah, in video games, handing over narrative control to the audience. I think that's better. I think talking something about the
That's cool.
interactivity
Yeah.
and the nature of that with video games.
Just gotta find who Dan is.
That's a good
Dan Whitehead.
That was by Dan. Dan said that back in 2013.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Just a YouTube comment.
Another zinger by Dan.
And that was yet another zinger by Dan. Dan was killing it back in 2013.
Yeah.
Oh,
2020
was a good year for Dan.
11 years ago. Man,
I can't find who he is, but you could always just say Dan Whitehead and leave it at that.
It's fine.
People know they know. If they don't, they're not any worse off.
Dan Whitehead, if you know, you know. Also, if you know, please let us know because we do not.
Because we do not know.
Yeah.
Welcome to Prose and Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pros and Cons, a podcast by emerging writers for emerging writers. I'll be your host this evening, morning, afternoon, midnight, witching hour, whenever you're listening.
Witching hour.
I know, I love throwing that one in.
Yeah.
My name is Phoenix, and hello. Welcome. I would like to take you back. I'd like to take you back to the 1970s, which apparently appears to be quite a hotbed of activity in the world of text-based interaction. We have in the year 1975 to 1976, colossal cave adventure originally called Advent by William Crowther, which is thought of to be the first text-based adventure game based on the Mammoth Cave system in Kentucky. And then just a year before that, in 1974, we have Dungeons and Dragons, released by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in 1974. And then also 1979, The Cave of Time by Edward Packard is believed to be the first choose your own adventure novel. And today we're going to be diving into all things text-based, imaginary, using our imaginations as word processors or whatever you want to call it. And second person narratives. We've talked a bit about second person narration in a previous episode 62, if you want to go back and listen to that one. Today, we're going to be getting a bit more anecdotal, just talking into our own experiences, playing these games, writing these games, what we've done, because I'm pretty sure every single Precipice here loves them and has done quite a bit of exploration within them and has found quite a bit of joy in them. Even when I'm not playing them, I enjoy that they exist, and I think they're quite an interesting genre to explore.
1000%.
Yeah, we'll be getting all into that. But first, introductions. Paddy, you're in a cave, okay?
I am in a cave. I dwell in a cave. I'm a cave dweller.
You're in this cave, and it is dark. Very dark. As dark as a cave gets, which is
I didn't realize this was a role-playing situation. I'm very excited. Okay, it's dark.
Yeah, here you are. It's dark in there.
All right, here we go.
Now, this is the thing. Your light in your torch has just burned out, throwing you into the full mouth of this darkness.
Okay.
Your pack is, for some reason, stupidity, negligence, or maybe just curiosity pulled you too far forward. Your pack is in a few rooms back, if you can call
Typical
them
me.
rooms. Yeah.
Okay. Chambers.
Alternatively, you're pretty sure you're heading in the direction of the mouth, and you're pretty sure there was nothing too absurd between you and the mouth of the cave. If you could just feel your way forward a little bit more, lights might start to peek back in. Do you progress forward, or you try to feel back for your pack where you know you have a spare torch?
So, what's the first thing that came to mind here is, well, how much do I care about the game that I'm playing and how much do I care about my character? If it's a game where I'm like, let's just see what happens, yeah, I'm pushing on, sure, absolutely. But if I invested a lot of time in this storyline and I'm really caring about it, which in some ways I think only narrative video games can do, or narrative games, then I'm definitely going back and checking for my pack. Like I'm not pressing on That sounded like a trap, Phoenix. That's the narrator trying to lure a trap for me. 100% like, but it's only a little way to the end of the cave. Like, no. I've been here before. No.
All right. So you get your hands on the wall and you start to turn around. At least you think you're turning around. It's hard to tell. So you orient yourself back in the way you think you're going. And you're pretty sure you have it correct, as best as you can tell. You start feeling your way forward. You get on all fours just to avoid tripping on anything, potentially.
Oh, that's wise.
And then you're going for a ways. Time crawls by as you're crawling by, and you're not quite sure how much time passes. Eventually, you do feel a very familiar fabric in your hand, and you have found this comfortable wad on the ground. That is your backpack.
Thank
and
God.
The relief, the visceral relief is absurd. You open it, and inside isn't a torch, but a question. Who are you, and who are you, and what are you doing on this podcast, and could you introduce yourself?
Oh my God, what a ride. I'm Paddy Boylan, and my mind's just been blown. Wow. I am a creative writer. I'm a creative writing teacher. I am an editor, and I am a technical writer. So I do lots of writingly things.
I love writingly things.
Yeah. I'm currently working on my first novel, which is Sovereignty, which is about home defense gone too far.
It's excellent. If you haven't read it, which you haven't because it's not published yet, but just so you know, it's excellent.
Thank you.
Alex, you are on a boat, and it is much smaller than a boat you should have taken based on where you are in the ocean, which is lost and far out. Your boat feels like as though it's shrinking with how much grander the ocean continues to feel every single day, and you find yourself this little drop right in the middle of this thing. One night, you're out there looking at the stars, and you feel the only way to describe it is that the ocean heaves below you in a way that doesn't feel like the normal rock and turn of the waves. You can go back inside and check on the radio to see if you can maybe get some sort of response this time, or you can cast your fishing line into the water and see what happens.
Roll them bones, baby. I'm gonna cast my fishing line.
Oh, it's the spirit.
You throw your line into the water, and this is not a flimsy pole. This is
Come on, Leviathan.
Beefy. Yeah, this is a commercial fishing rod. You throw that thing in, it's anchored into the boat. Your whole boat is the anchor for this thing. And as it hooks, be it a mouth, be it a back, whatever it is, your boat rocks, nearly tipping the edge all the way into the water. And just for a second, before you don't reel this thing in, just for a second, just before your line snaps, just like nothing, you think you see the back of something breaking the surface of the water, and that something is a question. Who are you, and what are you doing on this podcast, Alex?
So good. So good.
It managed to surprise me again, which is really dumb.
And very pertinent, actually, given what I've been working on. My name is Alex Eldridge. I am a writer. I've had things published in a few different articles. The big issue, most recently in the Westward's BAD crime anthology, which has come out. And I'm currently working on a book in the same way that Paddy is, although it's not one that I've told you, Phoenix, about. Paddy, I have told about it. And it actually does involve being in a boat. So that was very germane.
Okay, right on. And I'm Phoenix. I'm your host. I'm not gonna narrate my own little scenario to myself. I'm an editor, founder of Bentlight Writing. I actually just gave a talk. If you were at, well, it's already passed. If you were at ACE's VCon 24, then you already know. But I just did a talk on authenticity versus sensitivity there. Had a good time. And I also write. With that, we are going to jump into this. So,
oh boy,
text-based narrative. I know, I'm excited. It's Friday, but it feels like a Saturday morning, a little bit like Saturday morning energy. Okay, we're fine.
That's definitely Saturday morning sun.
Yeah, my wife just opened my shadow to water the plants. Anyway, big Saturday morning. vibes for me. What are your two, like when I throw it to you, text-based games, what's the first thing that comes to each of your mind, your primary experiences that come to mind with that?
Originally when you suggesting this topic, I thought of all the great text-based games I played, and I've played a lot, and I love narrative-based games. But as you said, Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games are also text-based games, really. Well, I suppose they're also dialogue, like spoken dialogue games, but well, that's text. And I have just so much experience with role-play games. So yeah, role-play games, my beloved.
I don't have as much experience with role playing games as Paddy. I have DM'd once or twice, but the first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about that is I've recently started playing a visual novel, which is a game on. I'm currently playing it on my PS4. It's called Doki Doki Literature Club. I don't know if you guys have
Oh
heard
my
of it.
gosh. No.
Would that
it
be,
is-
I don't know, a Japanese game by any chance?
It's just
it's actually not.
Oh,
It's
really?
actually not.
Okay.
It's very based on anime, but I believe it is an
Oh, okay.
American.
Okay,
yeah,
but using the trappings of, right, because Doki Doki Literature Club,
Yeah,
like, come
but
on.
It is,
so
yeah.
it appears to be a dating sim, and you're just reading through and going through all the stuff there. But actually, it becomes a psychological horror, and
I've heard
it
of
is
this.
yeah, it is one of the
Ooh.
most unsettling things I've ever played.
Ooh.
It's like it's got a whole disturbing, like a content warning at the beginning. Like it really is like, hey, this is like not what you think it is. Like this is gonna get spooky.
Oh, wow. And you look at
And
the marketing and it's all like kind of bright colors and anime
yeah,
girls and
and it goes off a fucking
oh,
cliff, man.
wow.
It's really intense.
Oh
I
my
don't know
gosh.
what the policy with spoilers are in this, but like it,
Maybe keep it light.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
keep
what
it
you
light.
think it is.
How
Um,
interesting. I really
yeah,
want to find out more
so
about
that
this.
is that's a text-based adventure in the sense that you're constantly scrolling through things. There are images that pop up. It's kind of like a manga. Like there are these stock like anime girls that have these stock expressions, like they're happy or they're sad or they're confused or whatever. But other than that, it just kind of changes. And then when it gets a little bit deeper in it, it sort of starts glitching to say to put it lightly, and that's where it starts getting really really spooky. So that's been
Oh
my
my
most
gosh.
recent experience with it, and that's been really really incredible. I honestly can't play very much at a time because it's very unsettling.
Wow.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I like like forget the topic. I want to talk about this game.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say the characters are very well written, surprisingly well written for the style of like I guess it's manga because the characters don't move. And then which makes the psychological horror bits hit even harder. So that's all I'll say about it. Worth checking out.
Worth checking out. Is that available on Steam as well?
Yeah, it is. I think it's actually free on Steam. It cost me
What?
like $15 on PlayStation because I was like, I just want to play it on my home console. But yeah, I think you can just get it on Steam for free.
Wow. I log on and there's like, hey, you want this game? It's like, sure, I guess. Like, why not?
Yeah. Take it.
Well,
Take it.
that's very cool. That may have changed my weekend.
Not
Anyway,
to derail the conversation, but
Petty, I know you have some experience writing and you DM'd too. That's right. You did Ellie a course or you led a course on DMing or
No,
something?
that was Alex
That was
that did
Alex.
that.
Yeah,
But I
sorry,
have
I
been
changed
like,
subjects
no,
halfway
that's
there.
okay. We're interchangeable people. I have been playing and running roleplay games like Dungeon Dragon since I was what, 11 years old, 12 years old, so for a really really long time.
You popped
What
into my head
is-
when I thought of this episode. I really
I love
wanted
that.
to talk to you
love
about this as well. Yeah.
Thank you. The biggest difference between writing for something like Dungeon Dragons or a roleplay game, so a tabletop roleplay game where you sit around and you roll dice and you kind of tell a collaborative story and outcomes are randomized based on dice rolls. So you might charge at the ogre with your sword drawn and you might roll a really, really bad roll and it goes terribly. Or you might roll really well and it goes well. And that's sort of a lot of where the thrill comes from. The thing about writing a book or short story, obviously, is there's no randomization what's going to happen. The characters are going to do what they're going to do. In a roleplay game, the characters could do anything. Someone might try to romance the ogre. You can try and discourage them, but really, like, the spirit of the game is that you can do anything. So you need to write in such a way that it's loose enough to allow any potential event, but also tight enough so that should the players go onto the intended track, there is actually content there, which is a really interesting tightrope to walk. And some people just kind of wing most of it. They're really good at like coming up things on the fly, and they'll just do bare minimum and wing it. And sometimes you can tell. Alex has put his hand up.
Alex,
and other people,
yes.
I'm going to put my hand up, are over preppers and write a hell of a lot and a lot of contingencies, which can make for a good game, but makes for a lot of preparation time. So really different to writing for like a short story or novel because of that. Because like imagine writing a book, but you don't know what your characters are going to do.
Well, can I just interject there? And
absolutely.
Just to purely play devil's advocate for a second here, but not really, because I think it's a legitimate point. I feel like free writing does have an element of that, though. Like you just said, imagine writing a book and not knowing what your characters are going to do. A lot of people write like that. Like I certainly don't do that as much as I used to, but I definitely used to. And so it's almost becomes like the randomizing factor is more just the random generation you're doing on the fly if you're writing in that way.
Yes.
As opposed to the external characters. So there is some parity there, but I would argue, I would agree that it is a fundamentally different experience.
You're right. Although the big difference is all of the writing in theory takes place before the audience reads the book. So the difference is like, imagine once the audience reads the book, then the characters start to do different things. So
reacting to the book in real time,
as
opposed to you reacting to you making it yourself as you go. Through.
And I suppose a text-based video game is kind of like a middle ground because there are different paths the characters can take, or the main character can take, the player, but they're limited. So you can only write so many contingencies. I'm going to stop now. Those are my thoughts.
It's like there are contingencies when you're writing a campaign, but at the same time, I imagine you have these.
And a campaign is an ongoing series of games in a role-play game. Yeah.
Thank you. A campaign is like the overall arc, and then you might have episodes within that campaign, like based on play sessions and stuff. But because usually you do write these like staple anchor points because you're writing, again, it's like you're writing little islands where you have no idea how people are going to get there, but you know they have to get here or something sometimes.
100%. Yeah. You would write like big scenes or big places, and like how the players get there is up to them, but you know what the big set pieces are going to be, and you try and gently guide them toward it. And they inevitably thwart you in that. And you take care out.
It's almost like, just in terms of video games and limited paths and stuff, it's almost like a video game that has literally infinite paths to these bottleneck points where it's like you get these immense arrays of possibilities in between these anchor points and stuff.
The quote-unquote possibility space is very wide if we're going to get real pretentious about it, which I guess
that takes
I like that term,
college,
the possibility space. Yeah. Because you studied game design, right?
Space.
I did computer science, and then I did some game design classes and stuff, and that feels very game designy. Fun little anecdote, random little anecdote, but it is like my favorite part was one assignment we had to take chess, and they said the whole assignment was just introduce one rule that changes the game. Like like you can write one extra rule and see what you can do. The class ended up talking about my rule and analyzing it because it was the best one. But I introduced the Black Plague, which meant that every turn or every 5 turns, you have to, or let's say 2 turns, whatever you agree, you have to take a piece off the board in order of strength. So you start with your pawns, working your way up to the king. So suddenly it changes the currency value of pieces and stuff like that.
So does that mean that you take a pawn off the first, say, 5 rounds, whatever, and then the next one you continue to take another pawn, or you have to rise up a rank? You have to go to a bishop?
No, you continue with your pawns until you no longer have pawns, and then you take a knight, and then blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
So your pawns have immensely more value because now they're protecting your bigger pieces in a bigger way, but they're also rotting.
Fascinating.
Good
metaphor,
and then
too,
you can
like the plague, like working its way up the.
Exactly, it works on a few levels, as well as it if anyone plays chess out there, it also introduces things about like because pawn structures are a really big deal. So if your pawn structure is also rotting, you have to plan your pawn structure around the degradation of your pawns. And And this worked out to be a better segue than I thought, because one thing that I started playing with a long time ago in terms of text-based games, I had actually written it was meant to be a long distance text-based game with a lot of space between turns, set in Italy during the
I
time
remember
of the
this.
Black Death.
Yeah, I recall this.
Yeah.
And I wrote quite a lot out. It was a lot of fun. I had such a good time writing that thing. Nobody ended up playing it except for like a few little testers. But like, God, I had such a good time writing that thing. And just I do love writing games. I find it very fun. So writing the rules and how the mechanics will work, but also how it is that balance of like how much story do you write versus how much space do you leave. And like you have to be very honest about how many anchor points you need, especially because as soon as it's so wild how you think you have enough anchor points, you think you have enough scaffolding, and as soon as you let your players go within them, they find all of your holes so fast, and immediately
Mm.
you feel so naked. I don't know. It's a
Well, I guess that's just like when you have beta readers for your own work and you think this is the best thing in the world, and they say like, I don't understand what's happening in this scene. This fight scene doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why
yeah.
are they doing that? You're like, oh,
What's the motivation?
it's not as perfect as it seems.
A really good this is getting a little meta, but a really good literary depiction of this sort of game that's threaded through with an actual story of where things happen, like happens in narratives, is a book by John Darnielle called Wolf in the White Van. I think I've talked about it
Yes.
before here. And it's basically it threads the idea of like, oh, this is this text-based game that you like mail away for it. I think it's set in like the 90s or something. And the consequences of that game intersect with the consequences of real life in a way that's very interesting and ultimately traumatic.
Wait, you mail away for the actual game, or in the game there's a game that gets mailed away for?
Okay, so I'm talking about a book. That's Wolf in the White Van.
Right?
And within the book, there is a game that is
okay.
the protagonist has essentially set up for other people to play, and these two kids basically start playing the game, and the consequences of that down the road are very tragic. So it's within the context of this discussion. I just thought it was a bit meta.
I mean,
it's
based
also
on the
a very
name,
good book. What's that?
Based on the name Wolf in the White Van, I can kind of take guesses at some things that may happen, and oof.
Yeah,
it's not what you think.
Title, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Very abstract title. Very good book.
Very good.
Interesting.
Also, I just finished just diving down this rabbit hole. I just finished listening to, or I have like 20 minutes left of The Handmaid's Tale. The style between The Handmaid's Tale and Wolf and White Van, I found them very similar in the time. They like these like really short, sharp, sort of flat falling sentences, just like these quick one-liners that just kind of set a tone as a description. They both do that
I really
a
like
lot.
that.
Yeah, it was really
I like that style of writing a lot myself.
Yeah, me too. I would like to read it, but I've always Margaret Atwood's writing style has always rubbed me the wrong way, and I've never tried to read The Handmaid's Tale, so I think I'll give it that a go. I'll give it one last chance.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. But anyway, off of this, or I'll frame it like this actually. Why do you think we like role-playing games, text-based games so much? Like, what do you think is if you had to sum up the call of the genre? Because it is immensely popular. Like, real play podcasts aside, where you listen to people play Dungeons and Dragons, which I find like immensely entertaining.
Which I can't personally do. I don't enjoy those myself. Yeah,
but like there's an immense call to. There's been a resurgence of Dungeons and Dragons. That original The Cave of Time, that choose your own adventure novel, that sold millions of copies and continues to sell. People were and are very drawn to these things. What is this like? What do you think the call to the genre is, Paddy? Or
I have heard
no right answers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have right answers. That's good. I just got words, Phoenix. I just got words. I've heard this as a definition for what a game is, and I think it's probably contentious. You can argue that it is, it isn't, but I like this as a definition. A game is a series of interesting decisions, and that's kind of it. So what makes a game is you are like even if you're literally pushing buttons, you're pushing different buttons, and you always choose which button to press, and the different buttons have different consequences, be it like a success state or a fail state or whatever, or what happens to your character. So for me, narrative rich, let's say video games or role play games are I was hesitating to say this, but I'm going to say it, absolute crack, because it combines the joy of like good narrative with the interactivity of I'm going to make a series of interesting decisions, and then the narrative adapts to that, and I love that so much, because you know, reading a book is a passive experience. That's fine, it can be very engaging, but playing a video game is an active experience, and yeah, that's all.
I
love
think
it.
they're almost two sides of the same coin. Playing a video game and playing and reading a book, because in a book, while it is passive, you have to do all the mental labor of creating that physical world. So
you do.
The activeness is in that. Whereas in a video game, all that labor is offset, but the labor is for you to actually kind of determine the story. So they're these different push-pull forces.
Yes. Unless it's a totally text-based video game, in which case there's still the mental labor of
still choices. Oh, well, yeah, exactly. And then
it was of reading and imagining and stuff like that.
Exactly. There's then in that case there's both, but you could probably argue that the latter, the actual physical interaction is vastly reduced. You know.
Yes.
I think the pull of these games is that they well, the immediate answer I want to go to is the same answer as why when I was 12 I absolutely obsessed over Grand Theft Auto 3 and just running people down and like beating up cops and stuff, because it's fantasy fulfillment. It's just like, hey, I can inhabit this other role and, you know, see how the other half lives. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And then if there's a goal in it as well, that I think that only adds to it, because then that's that dopamine hit of, I achieved a thing. You know? So I think it's those dual sort of things.
You said something interesting earlier, Phoenix, which is I for some reason never really put this together, which seems really daft, but that a video game is almost inevitably in second person, and it's true. See, second person in like literature, I mean, it's not chosen very often, because I think second person over the course of like an entire book would, I don't know, maybe be kind of tiresome. Sure, there's plenty of examples where it's not, but in the video game, second person's like is the go-to. It is always you, and I never really thought about that, but I think there's really something to that.
Camera angles aside, you mean?
What do you mean camera angles aside?
Well, you have first person and third person.
Oh yeah, no, I mean just in terms of like if it's a text-based game, then
right.
it's gonna be second person.
Sure. Yeah.
And if it wasn't, I mean, just as second person's not always that engaging in like a novel, if it wasn't second person in a video game, I don't think it would be nearly as engaging. If they're not saying you, if you're just controlling person, then it's just they. What are they going to do?
What about first person? Because
I've never
to come back
that.
to it, I think Doki Doki uses I. Is it?
Oh.
I think. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I believe it does. A lot of it's just dialogue, so it's hard to remember. But yeah.
That is something I wanted to. That is, I feel, a big call to the genre is the use of second person, and just you. You know, if you have an audience who's used to reading a book, that's I, but they understand that I refers to someone that isn't them. They understand they're reading someone else's I or about another character, and then suddenly they have a book that says you and talks right at the reader. It suddenly it creates this, whoa, me? Like, okay, what am I doing? And it's almost like even if it's poorly written, there's an innate curiosity, because it's like, oh, you're daft enough to talk about me. You have no idea what I'm doing. All right, tell me what I'm doing. And then like there's a whole discussion on that. But there's an innate pull with you that kind of pulls someone in, and that is really a staple of the genre. It's you. And something I just noticed is it's kind of the opposite with video games, because in a book, even if you're reading I, you understand it as someone else's I that you're reading. Whereas in video games, even if it's third person over someone's shoulder and you're playing as a character who has a name like Kratos or something, it's not you, and yet you fill it with you. It's the opposite of a book, which is an interesting sort of thing.
Yes, and I just had a thought. I think that might have a lot to do with agency. When a book, when they say you walk down the corridor, maybe part of what's missing is, but you're just telling me I walk down the corridor. Like this kind of feels hollow, because you're telling me it's me, but I've got no choice. So, okay, I'm just going along with what you say I do. Whereas in a video game, it's always you walk down the corridor and you have a choice to walk down the corridor.
That's super true. Because I was just picturing, like, even at the beginning of this episode where I started putting you both in those scenarios, and I said, you are here. There's an innate there's more curiosity because, or it's like there's more investment because you do know you have agency. Like, all right, you understand I'm setting a scene, but you know there's going to be a point where I stop talking and I'm going to leave you there. Whereas if you are in a book, it's implicitly understood that that's not going to happen. You might have there is still interaction in the sense of, like, you can choose your own adventure, you can choose different outcomes, and then the interest starts to expand as the agency starts to expand a bit, or there is something to that. It would happen in video games as well as in Dungeons and Dragons. It could happen if the DM isn't very flexible, and it's called railroading, where it's like you set these events up and you give the guise of choice, but you end up just funneling people into the same thing. And we talked before about, like, you have your anchor points, but you want them to be kind of sparse because you do want to create as much choice as you can.
You do.
So if you
no, sorry, please finish your point. Yeah.
But the point being, if you're only giving the guise of agency over to your listener or player or whatever it is, by like, people sniff that out so fast because it's just this dissonance that you can't help but feel when someone hands it over to you. It's like, what do you do? And you do this thing, you say you do something, and it all just kind of leads to the same outcome regardless of what you do, and you just find the person just bending it to get you into this particular place.
Yeah.
Depending on how different your action was from the consequence, you might feel it, just the dissonance just immediately takes you out of the narrative. So as a dungeon master or whatever other guide to a particular story you're playing, you're constantly fighting with that balance of wanting to create staples and space for the player's choices to actually matter. And
yes,
yeah,
you do ideally want to do that. And just quickly, the dungeon master, sort of like the part storyteller, part referee for a Dungeons and Dragons game, sometimes game master. You do ideally want to be doing that, carving out plenty of space for player choice and making those choices interesting and significant, series of interesting choices. However, really, really good railroading, really good, it looks like a choice, but it's actually not. I'm going to say it, is fine and good and can actually sometimes be ideal. Because in a video game, you can play an entire role-play game, video game, like one of those choose your own adventure path type things, and you can end up at the big fight with the bad guy, and you can feel like, I made all these choices myself, and I got here through my own decisions. But then if you find out that 100 other people all played the game and all the events were the same, you'd be like, oh, I didn't really have choices at all. It was false choices. Like, if everyone's going through the same events, then, oh, okay, we were just railroaded. However, with something like a role-play game where it's a one-off, you can have a disguised railroad and the players won't know, and they get to the final boss, which is always what you intended, and if it's done really well, they wouldn't know that a lot of the time you're actually stripping the decision from them. For example, quick example, do you go to the left or the right? We go to the left. Well, you have like a Schrodinger's room situation where you make it so whatever they choose, there is the room you intended at the end of the forking path.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds cheap.
Or they both just go to the same room. It's just false.
Yeah, exactly. The room just moves to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I railroaded both of you at the beginning. I gave you each two choices, regardless of what you picked. You were gonna introduce yourself.
We're still gonna find the question. Yeah, exactly. But I felt like I had the illusion of choice, which I enjoyed.
Yeah,
it's true. There is hiding the railroad, and when done well, I mean, there are so many games that hide the railroad really, really well. And
the BioShock games.
The BioShock games. That's what I was gonna. That's a excellent hiding of the railroad.
Don't hide the railroading.
Yeah, then they tell you
very, very deliberately. It was like, hey, we've been railroading you this whole time. What do you think about
that?
Which
is very clever.
It's incredibly clever. It's one of my favorite video game twists of all time.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are moments where that railroad feels so bad. I guess what would you say? What would you say makes a bad railroad?
I mean, this is getting away from narrative. in level design, if you're designing, let's say, a first-person game, that's one of those games where you inhabit the eyes of the character and you literally move around a space. If a level is designed well, it will give you the illusion that you are freely exploring this place and you come across the next level as a result of your exploring, rather than you were always going to go to that level. It was always A to B. Bad level design, it's almost like a theme park ride. The deviating paths
Yeah.
feel like false deviating paths. You're like, okay, well, the developers want me to go here, and they want me to go here, and they want me to go here. Like you're walking through like a ruined city, but oh, there's rubble here and you can't pass. Oh, there's a locked
Yeah.
door here and you can't get through. So you're like, okay, well, you want me to go this way. All right, fine. Just give me like a big arrow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does.
I don't know how that's relevant to narrative. It might not be, but
Hey, sorry guys, I have to take off. I actually had a dinner planned, so I'm gonna drop
What?
out. But
Alex, wait. What is this?
you're abandoning us?
What are you? All right. No, that's fine. No, enjoy your dinner.
Like we didn't just have a conversation. That's very funny.
Just for the listeners at home, Alex has actually had to step out for he has a dinner, so he's had to leave.
he has a dinner.
So you're left with Paddy and I. Welcome to
Just you and
it's
I,
an
Phoenix.
even more intimate conversation.
It is. It's now a duologue.
It's a duologue.
Well, I get a question for you, Phoenix.
Yes, ask away.
Obviously, you're a connoisseur of text-based video games. What is the one that you think like that you're like, this did something so well, or this is my favorite example because of this, or this did something I could never have expected? Like such a text-based video game that it uses its text-basedness in a way that's remarkable. What do you think? What do you think, host? Turning it around on you.
Hello, Phoenix here. Just a little side note. As I was going through editing this episode and listened to my response to Paddy's question here, I found myself being quite dismissive to my own experience and exposure with text-based games and role-playing games and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify, while I have not played a lot of computer text-based adventure games or read choose-your-own-adventure novels, Dungeons & Dragons has been a part of my life since high school, which was quite a while ago now, and I've listened to many, many, many hours of real play Dungeons & Dragons podcasts. I've explored other play systems, and through my own experience in game design have explored the pairing of literature and game mechanics and things like that. It is a topic I'm very interested in, and I don't know why maybe I have some self-exploration to do on this one around why I dismiss this question and my own exposure to these games, but they have been pretty integral in my life up until this point. Anyway, with that, I'll give it back to my past self. See you later. So I would far from consider myself a connoisseur of text-based games because I have not actually played a great deal of them. But
that actually really surprises me. That really surprises me because you love literature and you love games.
Yeah, I'm a connoisseur in the sense that I do deeply enjoy them and I find them fascinating and I love what they do. But I couldn't. I actually haven't played, or no, I haven't played a text-based game. I've played like a point-and-click adventure game. Like I've played those sorts of video games. But in terms of text-based visual sort of novel games, I haven't played any of those, save, well, there may have been one, but I've forgotten the name.
I think there's a lot of overlap because like one I was going to mention and have mentioned before is Disco Elysium, which it is a point and click adventure game, but it is all about the text, and really it wouldn't have to be point and click adventure. It could just be branching choose your own adventure paths, really.
But so what I will say, so one that comes, I have played Machinarium. At this point, it's a very old game, but that's like a point and click graphic novel sort of situation.
Yeah, beautiful game.
Beautiful game. Point and click graphic novel puzzle sort of situation. So what I will say, one thing that I really like about text-based games is it does, the imagination is so incredibly immersive. I remember reading it was like a meme or something, and it was talking about how books are like the wildest things because you hold this thing in front of your face and you hallucinate for like 2 hours while you're holding this object in front of your face, and then you put it down and you go about your day and nobody talks about this.
That's incredible. True. Wow, that's one of those moments where you're like, oh my god.
Yep.
We're really strange.
Yeah. The mind is such an incredible processor if Like once you start to quiet it down, visuals can sometimes be a very loud way to try to pull someone's attention. And currently that is kind of the go-to way of pulling someone's attention are loud visuals that grab attention due to color or
Yes.
whatever. But very
Yes.
rarely does it hold attention because it just makes someone look. Text-based games are and books in general are so effective because of they're slow. And because they're slow, yes, some people might put them down, but the people that drop into it are going to be deep into it and they're really going to feel it and even like
Yes.
really sympathetically feel it. Like you
Oh
can
yeah.
feel some things in your body and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it
So,
develop a very emotional connection as well. And I think it's because you
yes.
can, like, it's not things are happening, you need to react, you need to shoot the bad guys. It's like you can experience it on your own level at your own speed. If you want to read, like with a book, if you want to reread a passage 5 times because you love it, you can do
Mm,
that. I think that builds for some really tight emotional bonds with the story.
absolutely. And what I love about text-based games, role-playing games, those sorts of things, is they do put you in. It's like even when I was narrating that thing again at the beginning of the podcast, as soon as I said you are in a cave and it's a dark cave, even though I'm the one
Mm.
narrating it, and I know what's going on, I feel myself in that cave, in that darkness. And that's one thing I love about writing, I love about reading, is it's like there are these moments, it's the same with writing, where I'm sitting at my computer and I am writing myself through a space. I'm actively exploring it in my mind. And it's, text-based games that really they draw you into yourself as opposed to pulling you out of yourself. And that's something that makes
Yes.
them so effective and so intimate. And, you come out of a D&D session and you've really like bonded with the people you've been with because you have
Hmm.
really like slowed down and gone through something together. And
Yeah.
it puts you
100%.
in that space, that sort of within yourself, and it's really deep exploration.
Yeah. This is what making me think like we haven't talked about choose your own adventure books really. And it's funny like because the choose your own adventure it's really like a video game on paper, but they're not popular. Like outside of like Goosebumps books for like, you know, young teens. There's no such thing as like a choose your own adventure. I don't think that adults read that's regarded as like good literature. And why do you think that is? Because like why not? Why couldn't you have one that's really good if you can have a video game that's regarded as art? And I definitely think you can.
I feel like this makes me want to do research because I feel like there's gotta be some adult literature books or for an adult audience, like Choose Your Own Adventure. I know when I
Mm,
was doing research for this episode, and was looking at, The Cave of Time, which is
hmm.
immensely popular, but it is more episodic. It's more like comic book-esque, or like little novelette, whatever you want to call it. They're very small. I did see a question that was like, what's the longest choose your own adventure book? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's for adults, but it brought the question into my mind of like, oh, certainly there are like full novel length pieces that are more choose your own adventure. And maybe there are some really good ones for all I know. I actually haven't explored the market. I've never read a choose your own adventure book. I love the concept. And now I guess the thing that turns me away from them is there is such an implicit novelty to them because it's like they do something that books don't normally do. You have a character that you like, and you know how normally when you read a book and that character dies, if you read it again, that character is always going to die and you can't do anything about it. This boasts you can do something about it, choose your own adventure, something like that. And that's this implicit novelty. And the thing that turns me off is, and this is an assumption, I assume that the author is going to lean too hard into that novelty and not actually do justice to the prose and the branching plot that they're constructing and making it a worthwhile reading experience. I feel like it'll just be too much, go this way and that thing didn't happen. Choose that thing
Yeah,
and blah. Um,
I agree. That's
yeah.
why I probably wouldn't pick one up because for some reason I guess it's a bias. Like I would assume like, okay, well, this is just about the novelty of it. But I mean, I don't think there's any reason why not because like a text-based video game, it might have more bells and whistles. Like you might have a sanity meter or something like that. Or, but I mean, it's kind of a glorified choose your own adventure. So
Mm.
why? And should we define what a choose your own adventure is? Because we haven't actually
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah. So when I have in mind choose your own adventure book, it's I'm thinking of the books that you read a certain passage and basically it gives you the option based on what you'd like to go to this page. And then you just
Yeah.
skip to the part of the book. It's basically many stories within 2 pages, and you just jump to the parts that are relevant based on where you just
Yeah.
came from.
If you want to go forward in the cave, turn to page 87. If you want to go back in the cave, turn to page 126. Yeah, like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But this honestly really has me thinking, because I've never actually considered writing in this medium or anything. But really, when explored and thought of as like, all right, I'm gonna task myself with writing something that is literarily meaningful,
Mm.
but within this choose your own adventure context, using this trope to actually add to the narrative, that I feel like that could be done. And it would be quite incredible if it was. Like the thing I'm thinking
Yeah.
of is like, what if you have something that has the same level of character development, but maybe you actively choose which character you follow, and you can,
Oh,
yeah, or
well, I
just like
like that.
you could play with it so many ways, and
What I thought you were going to
yeah,
say is like you choose how the character develops. Like
mm,
if you are
that too.
angry at Lucille breaking up with you, turn to page this. But if you are reflective and despondent, turn to this. I mean, that's like a simple,
Mm,
dumb version, but I don't know, like guiding characters. Imagine if all of the page turning decisions were like an internality moment, like a character's
mm,
internal state of mind.
hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's why hasn't this been done? Or maybe it has and we just don't
Maybe it
know about
has.
it, but it
Yeah.
seems like a fruitful space to explore.
The thing that's difficult with that medium and why I would be hesitant to pick one up is that, if you are giving agency to the reader based on like on internality moments or any moments like that, and again, depending on how well the author does this, based on the decision the reader makes, it might just diffuse the tension and there's no actual story there potentially. So as a reader, we kind of want to choose the easy moments sometimes, we're mad or maybe we're mad at this person, or maybe we do understand and stuff like that. And while we want to
You think we'd always
say,
choose the more dramatic ones? The
I was actually going to say, at least for me, like choose the more, they understand, or the be nice versions is it's very tempting
this
as
this might be
humanity.
just more of a reflection on you because I think a lot of people like all the people that play video
True.
games and the first thing they
That's
do is
true.
like kill the stranger. Or like, so I've run a lot of Dungeons and Dragons games where I'm the dungeon master, and so often you get new players sitting down. You're like, okay, you're all sitting in a tavern, and one player because they've never played before and they're just drunk with the possibility is like, all right, I attack the tavern keeper. Like, I got a crossbow. How
True.
much damage does that do? And they just start rolling to hit. So I
Yeah,
don't know, man. I like that's very
that's
good
true.
natured of you, but I think a lot of
Okay,
players
okay.
are people just want to see the world
Agnostic.
burn in their stories.
Agnostic of good decisions or bad decisions. Actually, the challenge is depending on if you even it doesn't need to be the good decision, but people might choose what they choose, and there might not actually be a story in that direction. Like it's like,
Mm.
okay, I mean you can kill them, but it diffuses all the tension. It kind of takes away from the plot significance in these ways. And as authors, a lot of times we make the reader accept certain decisions for certain payoffs and certain reasons that they build to. So it would be very difficult to give the reader agency in a
Yeah.
way that satisfyingly builds.
That there's so
Whereas,
many payoffs or so many decisions, right?
yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
whereas,
Yeah.
yeah, or yeah, either so many decisions, so many payoffs, if it's done, I guess, well, or even cooler for me maybe would be they do even regather to a point, and regardless of which way you went, you come to the same culmination at the end. That'd be cool too. But the challenge is that potentially some of them might just be dead ends. There's not really anything over there. It just
Yep.
diffuses into nothing, and it doesn't actually tie back into anything.
Yeah. It reminds me of
Um,
generative level design. You know, like when you play like a roguelike. So for the people
mm,
that don't know, it's just a type of video game, but some video games have there's like an algorithm that will randomly generate the level, like the terrain around you. And a lot of the complaint about these randomly generated piece of terrain, like even though it's novel every time and you never know what you're gonna get, it's like because it doesn't have the hand of the creator, like I'll put a tree there and a mountain there. Sometimes the levels just feel bad or they don't feel believable or there's just something up with them. Whereas like if a level designer deliberately creates a level, then it feels engaging because, they've got intention behind it and they're building a certain way. Does that make sense?
yeah, actually, I
Yeah.
was just I've gotten really, you've recommended this person to me, but I can't remember his name
Okay,
right now.
that's exciting.
Joel, he does video essays on like
Oh
fear of big
yes, what's
things
his name?
underwater.
Jacob Geller.
Jacob Geller.
Yeah,
I've
oh, I love
recently,
him.
oh, he's so good. Jacob Geller on
Yeah,
YouTube. If you're listening, great work.
please give us a review.
Yeah.
Help us be like you.
Yeah. But he was actually just one I'm watching is one on games that don't fake the space. And it's all about
I've
like,
seen that.
but
Yep.
he's literally talking about this thing. He's comparing a game called Fuel, I think, which has an absurdly massive map that does have the hand of the creator, if you want to call it, or a touch of authenticity
Yeah.
throughout it. So everywhere
Yeah.
you go, it feels like there's intentionality. You know,
Yeah.
even if you find nothing, you found something because you found
It feels
that
different.
thing that someone put there.
Yes. Yes.
Versus he compares it to like a Minecraft map, which is like much many times larger than the planet Earth, but
Hmm.
it's procedurally generated to a point where it's just procedurally generated.
Yeah. There will
You
always be a
might
degree of
find,
jank in that.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, you might
Um,
find I could that example felt like it was gonna be really good, and I just like
oh
came
no,
in
it's
right
just
over the
it's
top
just
of
the
it.
opposite, I guess. So like it's the same thing where if you decide to explore in a certain direction, there's a level of meaninglessness to it because even like for example if you explore a map that was hand created, even if you go a direction and find nothing relevant to the plot but you do find a rock, you at least know like someone put this rock here and I found it. It's almost like there's this inherent little nod versus if you're exploring something that's procedurally generated, if you go a direction and end up finding absolutely nothing, it was just absolutely nothing. There's no
Hmm.
nod between player and creator. It's like, oh, you
Hmm.
just kind of went a direction. There could be something said for you're pioneering a virtual space. Could be cool,
Yeah,
but
and field
it's
may be
different.
potentially empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar to, I think, with a text-based game in that, so you give the player, I mean, ideally, lots and lots of options. So it feels like they really have choice because, it's
Hmm.
all about agency. That's why it's different to a book. But then it's on you to make all of those choices feel consequential. If a player like chooses to go somewhere and I mean, the writing's not good, or like in a story, you can tell when a scene's sort of like superfluous to the story, and if it's often, yeah, you're an editor, I'm sure you've come across this, and you're like, does this need to be here? What purpose is this serving? Does it tie in? I
Yeah.
think in a text-based game, there's always the honest onus to, yes, it needs to be exploration, but it always needs to be rewarding and feel like it's tied in and feel significant to the overarching journey, and that feels similar to the whole procedural generation thing. Like, there's a different like it's it doesn't really mean much if there's loads and loads of choices, but a lot of those choices feel like crud.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
And
this didn't matter. Why am I here? Why am I at the end of this dock with rotten fish? Like, there's nothing.
it
Like, okay,
starts to
great.
pull away at trust in the author's voice if it because that's
Yes.
them putting aside, you don't trust that they're leading you somewhere anymore. It's like, okay, you've given
Yes.
me this choice, I've chosen this thing and it's actually dead-ended and there's not actually anything over here. Suddenly you don't trust that you're okay, what's to say that the next decision I make is actually going to lead somewhere cool versus like part of
Yes.
what makes it exciting is that it's like I can choose anything and all this is going to be like, and you've put something over here for me. It's like, oh, actually I haven't. Then it's like, oh, well then, all right, which direction should I go then? Like, just tell me, because
Yeah. 100%. And I felt like that in games as well, and even in text games, where it's just like, okay, fine. You want me to do this? Or sometimes like it's a railroad by the fact that the interesting choices are in one direction and the non-interesting choices, the ones that aren't as well written or aren't as consequential, like that's almost like an indicator of like there's nothing over here, buddy.
hmm
You can click on these buttons, but really that's the button over there.
hmm
And that's not good because you can
yeah,
feel the rails like we were talking about before.
yeah. And what one kind of reoccurring joke of the genre is when people because there's this theme of the railroad and well hidden, not well hidden, whatever it is. I love it when it's really fun as an author or DM to make the railroad kind of humorously evident, where it's like, oh, you can go anywhere you want. Oh, the wall collapsed. Oh, whatever. Or it's like, or just
Yeah.
very obviously whatever they picked, they were gonna end up in the same place. It's like,
It reminds me of like I haven't read it, but like Alex talked a few times about Dracula and slight spoilers for Dracula 3, 2, 1. There's a moment where Dracula's like, "You're free to leave at any time. You can leave the castle
oh yeah,
anytime." And the guy looks out the window and there's like a thunderstorm, like wolves circling the hills. It's
yeah,
like, no, I think I'll stay, Mr. Dracula.
yeah.
It's like,
I
yeah,
actually,
that feels similar.
it's so in my game, the Black Death Italian medieval exploration game, when people are going into character creation, I have this moment where they're wandering back into their house and they collapse, they see a bed and they're really, really tired. It's like, do you collapse on the bed and go to sleep, or do you fight it and try to stay awake? If they collapse on the bed and go to sleep, they go to sleep. If they try to stay awake, they're given an option of like, oh, now you're really tired. You go to sleep. It's just like,
I think I
no matter
remember
what,
encountering that, but I found it funny. And I've
yeah,
seen that in video
exactly.
games
It's
before where it's
funny.
like when it's so obvious, you can have a
Mhm.
laugh at it. It's like, I know what's happening here. You know that I know what's happening. This is all okay.
It's a wink. It's like, hey, why don't you go to sleep?
Yeah. Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
story's in that
But
direction.
50% in theory of the players will choose to go to sleep and they'll never know that it was a rail. So again, you can have those hidden railroads, right? Because some players will never
Exactly.
find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I've always wanted to write a text-based game. Like at the back of my mind, it's there that one day I will get on one of these game making programs. That means you don't need a ton of dev knowledge and write one because like I'm such a
Mm.
massive fan and I know what I love. So in my mind, I could do it justice.
Mm.
I mean, but who knows? I don't know how much time there is, but do you mind if I talk about one game a little bit that I played semi recently?
Go for it. Yeah, and then we'll wrap
Okay,
up.
sure. Look, it's a if anyone's like listening, this is like, well, like, well, I like the sound of a text-based video game. Where can I find one? I recommend trying a little game called Road Warden. ROADWARDEN, one word, Road Warden. It's mostly text. You are a character who's been sent to this remote part of the kingdom, and you're not particularly powerful. You're just sort of like you've got like an axe to cut firewood and a blanket, and that's it. And you're just sort of thrown into this world. It's all text based. There's like things like you've got like a hunger meter or how dirty your clothes are. And if your clothes get dirty, that'll hurt interactions with other people. But like what makes it, I was thinking about this in the lead up. What makes it great is like the atmosphere is so rich. Everywhere, every choice you make, many of the choices are where you're going to go in this land. Every choice, even if it's a dead end, it will be a dead end, but it will have something interesting. Like there's a weathered statue to an unknown god, and you think it winks at you at one point, or something like that. I just made that up. But like
Mm.
there'll be something that gives a hint as to the world. So even if you haven't got some material bonus, like you've gained money or you've gained a clue, you learn something about the world you're in. And it all makes for like incredible atmosphere. Like the
Mm.
world feels so lived in. And the other thing is the style of writing. So the writing is like very good. Honestly, like book level at times, many times, but it's never too long. It never makes you read like an enormous passage before the next
Mm.
decision comes up. It's always brief. And if there's a character, even if it's a significant character in the game, it will just give you just enough details to know about that person for now. Maybe like they're a very large, heavy set man with a big laugh, and that's it. If you choose to interact with that person more, then you'll start to learn more and more. But it never overburdens you with details you don't need. There was
Mm.
never a time when I'm through, like, okay, I don't need to know this. I'm clicking through, whatever. No, it just gives you enough. And then naturally, if you investigate a certain direction, it will give you more details based on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It actually just asks the character in a way what they're interested in, or the player what they're interested
Yeah,
in. And if they're
100%. Yeah,
interested
in a
in,
subtle
like
way.
in real life, if you're interested in something,
Yep.
you'll learn more about it. And
Yeah, and if you're
like
not
that.
interested, then that's okay. You only got one paragraph about this guy, and you never have to speak to them again. And it
Mhm.
all comes together like beautifully. So Road Warden, really, really cool. 90% of it is text. Yeah,
Mm.
check it out.
Right? That's cool. So Road Warden, Doki Doki Literature Club. We got some
Yep.
good recommendations. Dungeons and
Yes,
Dragons, if you haven't heard of it. Uh,
absolutely.
Absolutely great game.
You do need a game master though, like a dungeon master, to make it work, unfortunately. And
Yes.
that's a whole finding the person to actually write the story or run the game is a whole other thing. But
If you are interested in Dungeons and Dragons, where you are, I do recommend looking up I've done it in Barcelona, just looking up meetup groups. If you're trying to find, there are communities that love to play, get together to play. It's a great way to meet people as well. Um, as well as I find it incredibly, if you're a writer, I find it incredibly helpful for my writing inspiration. As well as I find it incredibly therapeutic because as a writer, like, I'm focusing on structure, like how do I make this interesting, all this stuff. It's very liberating to have something that's just pure imagination. Like I'm gonna make a character that does this and this and just let it fly. It's just like not super serious, just whatever. And I find that end up getting some ideas by just letting my mind fly like that. Just like it's just pure imagination, pure fun. It's a lot.
I remember in that one game that we played, didn't you end up writing a story based on the character that you created for that game?
Yeah.
Wasn't that character the inspiration? Yeah.
Yeah. And that story actually ended up almost got published by the British Fantasy Society. So
oh hell yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Keep workshopping that, man. If that can almost get published, I think you can.
I was proud of that.
I don't know, that would be my instinct, is to keep. Well,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe it just needs some tweaks, and you can.
I've sent it off to
out the door.
I sent it off to some other people because the British Fantasy Society, they did tell me like, hey, sorry it took so long. We had an incredibly large slush pile this time. But anyway, we're reviewing your work and considering it for publication because we like it, whatever. So I was like, okay,
super
sick.
Impressive, man.
As well as at the end, they said, like, hey, we didn't go with this one, but just so you know, it has nothing to do with quality. Like at this point, at this level, like it's pure taste of the editor and stuff. All of these stories could have been published and they would have been like, they're all fine. So it was a huge compliment. Bummer in the end, but it was a fun little, because people, I think it's like a kind of in the community sort of writing advice, like don't write a story based on your Dungeons and Dragons character. So part of me gets a little catharsis from it.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Yeah, well, you can if you
need to come back to those forums in all caps, be like, listen here, mother effers.
It's not the character, it's your ability to write it. So,
maybe there's something to that.
Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I've had a great time in these Saturday morning vibes.
This is the kind of stuff I like to talk about anyway, because I'm a massive nerd. So, thanks for facilitating that, Phoenix.
Oh, it was my pleasure. But if you did enjoy this conversation and you want to support us to create more conversations about this stuff, there are a multitude of ways, many of which come at zero financial cost to you. Just consider giving the podcast a like and a comment, a review.
Subscribe if possible.
Subscribe if possible. Those things help us immensely. It just helps more people find us, and that encourages us to make more content like this. We love doing it, and we're going to keep doing it, but it helps us immensely. So yeah,
it does.
Consider that. We're on YouTube as well if you wanted to subscribe to us there. We've written an anthology. We don't just talk about writing, we do write as well. The new Mythic nominated for a couple awards. That's on Amazon. There's an audiobook as well on Audible and many other audiobook platforms published by Dreamscape, with incredible voice talent on it.
Really incredible voice talent. Yeah.
Really incredible voice talent. I just saw Amy Smith, who's one of the voice actresses, just recently posted something on Instagram about like she's part of some panel at this cool sounding impressive thing. And I noticed that it was her, and I recognized another picture, and it was the guy that I think narrated your story, Paddy. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a community of like really badass voice actors, like all.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that we're tangentially connected to that. That's very cool.
Yeah. Anyway, rockin' talent on that. The new Mythic, go ahead and check that as well. If you have read it, listen to it, whatever.
Fantasy, horror, speculative fiction.
That's what it is. If you have read it, leave a review of that as well. And that's about everything. Paddy, what are the pros of text-based adventure games?
You can read as you play and play as you read. And Phoenix, what are the cons of text-based adventure games?
Well, like, sometimes you might just fall in a hole.
You're listening to Prose and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast.